Hello viewers, you're welcome to Wilson Global Learning and Training Academy. In our today's video, we'll be looking at biology and we'll be focusing on cells. Now, in this topic, cells, we're first of all going to look at what cells are and the different types of cells in the body and the categories, the animal cells and the plant cells. Now, what are living things made of? First, virtually every living thing is made up of cells, and therefore we say cells are the building blocks of all living organisms. And the cells, they come in different shapes and in different sizes. Now, there are different categories of these cells. We have unicellular organisms in terms of organisms, and we have multicellular organisms. For unicellular organisms, we say they are made up of only one type of cells. So when you say unicellular organisms, you're talking about organisms that are made up of only one type of cells. Example like bacteria, as we're going to take a look at thereafter. Now, in the other case, or the other hand, we talk about the multicellular organisms. The multicellular organisms are those organisms that are made up of many different types of cells. Like we human beings, we're made up of different specialized cells in our body, performing some specific tasks and during our body, and they have different structures and functions in the body as they are. Now, cells work together to carry out the basic 7 life processes. Although in my case I said 8 life processes, I've added 1 to the 7 basic life processes as it were, and I said my 8th life process is death, because I found out from my research that all living things eventually will die. And therefore, I have added this as one of the characteristics of all living things. Now, what are the 7 basic life processes? First of all, we take a look at movement. We say all living things move from one place to another or show some growth movement. In any case, all living things move, either in search of food, in search of anything, water, food, and to survive, for survival. Even plants that you don't see moving from place to place, they show some growth movement. So all living things do show movement. Then another life process that all living things have to undergo, it's respiration. All living things, plants, animals do respire in order to release energy for their life processes and for metabolic reactions. Then sensitivity. All living things respond to external stimuli. For example, you can see this person being responded to the direct heat from the sun. So all living things respond to external stimuli. If you take a nail or a needle to hit your skin, to touch your skin, you're going to react to it immediately because you're very sensitive to it. If light comes to your eyes, you're going to react. Your eyes are going to react because nerve cells is going to message, is going to be sent to the brain, and it's going to be interpreted, and it's as it were. Now, growth. All living things do show growth do grow from either by growing up or by increasing in size and weight, or by getting taller, bigger, and so on and so forth. So all living things, either plants or animals, do show growth in their case. Now, reproduction. Reproduction is also a characteristic of all living things. All living things do produce their young ones alive, either sexually or asexually. So all living things do undergo this life process. Then the 6th one is excretion. All living things do get rid of their waste product from the body, either in form of sweat, from the skin, urine from the kidney, and so on and so forth. All living things, plants or animals, do get rid of the waste product from the body. Then nutrition. All living things require nutrients so as they can that should be absorbed to be used in the body in form of energy. Okay, so in summary, these are all what it means. We represent these 7 life processes as Mrs. Grain. Mrs. Grain, it's just a short notation showing the 7 life processes. In my case, I am adding 1 now because of my new research. Death. I said death is a characteristic of all living things. because eventually I found out that all living things, plants and animals, they eventually die at the end of their process. So it's part of our characteristics of living things. Okay. How big is a cell? Now let's take a look at cell's structure. How big is a cell? We say normally the cell of in the body or in the plants or in any organisms spans from the range of 10 micrometer to 100 micrometer. They usually just like the diameter of our hair, the little hair from your head, the diameter of the hair, a small piece of hair. It's just how the size of a cell looks like. So usually you can see it viscously. You use a microscope to look at a cell. So it's in the body. We say the biggest cell in the body is the female egg cells, and the smallest cell in the human body, it's the sperm cells. The female egg cells is around 100 micrometer in diameter, and the sperm cell is around 5 micrometer in diameter. Now, what if we say that the cells are so small that they cannot be seen by our naked eyes in some cases? How then do we see the cell? Usually we use tools such as microscope, and which we go to study in physics, microscope, to look at the cells and see how it looks like, the internal structure and composition of a cell. So we use a microscope to look at it vividly, and therefore when we talk about microscope, we go to talk about the image compared to the object, how it was originally, and how it has been magnified. To what extent has it been magnified? So therefore, magnification we define as the size of the image over the actual size of the object. So if you want to see how an object has been magnified, you go to look at the ratio of the image to the actual size of the object. Now, specialized cells we're looking at right now. Specialized cells are those cells that perform specific functions in the body. So because there are different kinds of cells in the body, all performing different specific function in the human body or in animals or in plants. In human being, we have about 200 different types of cells working together to achieve the objective of human existence. Now, most cells are specialized. That means they perform specific functions and structure in the human body. All cells with a nucleus contain same genes, but different cells activate different genes, so they only produce the protein that they need at that particular point in time. Now let's take a look at the different kinds of cells, specifically the major cells that we have. In this case, we're categorizing them into plant and animal cells. For plants, what do they contain? Plant cells, what do they contain? And the animal cells, what do they contain? Now, if, for example, if we assume this shape as an animal cell, and we assume this as a plant cell, just for example, and if you take a look at this animal cell, you discover, or you see that here we have the mitochondrion, we have the nucleus, we have the ribosome, we have the cytoplasm, we have the cell membrane. Now, what do the mitochondria do? It's the site for energy synthesis in the body, or the release of energy in the body. Then the nucleus contains the DNA. The ribosome is the site for photosynthesis in the body. Cytoplasm, this is where the metabolic reaction takes place in the human body. And then what of the cell membrane? The cell membrane, it controls the what goes in and out of a cell. It's a semi-permeable aspect, partially permeable membrane that allows or controls what goes in and out of the cell. Now, let's take a look at the plant cells, what they have in common with the animal cells and what they have that the animal cells don't have. Now, if you take a look at the plant cells, for example, you discover that they both also have mitochondria, they have nucleus, they have ribosome, they have cytoplasm, and they have the cell membrane, but they have all the things that the animal cells don't have. What are those things? They have the vacuole, they have the chloroplast, and they have the cell wall. Now, what do all of these do? This chloroplast, we say, is it contains a green pigment which helps to trap the sunlight energy for photosynthesis to take place. Is the powerhouse is the site for photosynthesis in plant cells. And then the cell wall, it gives the rigidity and the structure of the cell and protection to the cell. Then the vacuum contains water and nutrients for the plant cells to carry out its metabolic activity. Okay, so now we want to take a look at some characteristics of the plants and animal cells, what they have in common, both of them, and what the plant cells have only. And let's see if you understand or you can categorize the characteristics of both of them and what the plant cells have than the animal cells don't have. Now, let's take a look at the first one, the nucleus. The nucleus, both plants and animal cells, they do have it. Let's check. Okay, good. Now we're going to verify that. If we're right or wrong, if we're wrong, we see. If we're right, we see. The cytoplasm, both the plant cells and the animal cells, they both have cytoplasm. So we put the cytoplasm in this place. Now, what of the chloroplast? The chloroplast, we said, is the site for the photosynthesis. It contains the green pigment, which helps to trap the sunlight energy for photosynthesis to take place. Therefore, it's only found in plant cells. Now, what of the vacuum? Vacuum contains water. It's a fluid-like substance that contains water and nutrient for the plants to carry out its own function. So, it's found in plant cells. Now, what of the cell membrane? The cell membrane, we say it's a partially permeable membrane that controls what goes in and out of the cell. So it's found in both plants and animal cells. What of the cell wall? The cell wall it gives the rigid shape of the cell and gives protection to the cell. So it's found in the plant cell only. What of the ribosome? The ribosome is the site for protein synthesis. It's found in both plants and animal cells. What of the mitochondria? The mitochondria is the site for energy released by respiration, so it's found in both plants and animal cells. Now let's check what we've done, if it's worth it. Yeah, that's great. That's it. So we move on to our next aspect of plant cell. We take a look at microbial cells, like cells from the microbe. What are microbes? Before we talk about microbial cells, what are microbes? Microbes, we generally have two categories: the harmful ones and the useful ones. The harmfuls, like the bacteria, we say the disease-causing organisms, like the bacteria. But the useful ones, like the yeast cells, they are used for making yogurt and all the bread and alcohol and other things that we consume in our daily lives. So the microbes, we're looking at them now into just two categories: the harmful and the useful ones. Other than the harmful one, we'll take a look at the bacterial cell. The bacterial cells, what do they contain? The bacterial cells, they contain the DNA molecules, they contain the flagella, and they contain the cell wall, they contain the cell membrane, they contain the cytoplasms. The DNA molecules contain the gene and everything that the cell is made of. The flagella enables the movement of the cell or the organism. The movement is used for locomotion by the organism. Then the cytoplasm, this is where the metabolic reaction takes place. And the cell membrane, it controls what goes in and out. It's a partially permeable membrane that controls what goes in and out of the cell. What of the cell wall? The cell wall gives rigidity, protection to the cell. So the bacterial cell contains all of this. But let's take a look at the yeast cell and see what they have in common with the bacterial cell and what they have that the bacterial cell do not have. Now, if you take a look at the yeast cell, or the microbial cell, they have the cell wall, which means they're protected, they be rigid, and they have the cell membrane, which controls what goes in and out. They have the cytoplasm when the metabolic reaction do take place, and they have the vacuum, which contains water and nutrient for the plant or for the cell to carry out its activity or for growth and other things. And then they have the mitochondria, which is the site for energy released in the cell. Now, okay, so these are the things they have then the bacterial cell do not have. So this is the difference between both the useful microbes and the harmful microbes. Other than the harmful microbes, we talk about the bacterial cells, and we've talked about what they contain and the functions of each of what they contain, and other the useful microbes. We talk about the yeast cells that it be used for alcohol productions, used for wine, making wine, and used for making bread, yogurt, ice cream, and a lot of this. And we've looked at the cell, what they contain, and what they have. Then the microbe, the bacterial cells do not have. Now let's move ahead and let's look at bacteria in general. We said the bacterial DNA is made up of a cluster of chromosomal DNA, the DNA, and it has a single strand which is called the plasmid DNA. Now, the plasmid DNA can reproduce independently of the chromosomal DNA. They can reproduce independently. Apart from the chromosomal DNA, they can do their work independently, and they can be transferred to other cells also. So the plasmid DNA can be transferred to other cells, and they can do the function independently, irrespective of the main parent DNA, which is the chromosomal DNA. And the bacteria, they lack mitochondria and the chloroplast, like we saw just now. And so we also said that some bacteria, they have one or more flagella, which they use for locomotion, movement. Look, by locomotion, I mean the movement. They use the flagella. They have one or more, depending on the size or types. They use this flagella for movement.